Are they not trying to please Messiah? Was it not pleasing to God that they accepted Messiah as their death, burial, resurrection, their sacrifice? And they got to the place where they started following church doctrine to the point they forgot what God said. We are in the same boat. And Hasatan is slowly but surely going, oh wait, he sees God bringing people back together, and then he's like, no, but you're not Jewish. No, but you're not Orthodox. No, but you're not this. And he's trying to stop the body coming together for the time and place. You will provoke them to jealousy. Understand that is end time stuff. There are more and more fellowships coming, and pastors all of a sudden knowing that Torah is what he kept. And guess what? There are more Jews and rabbis coming to the knowledge that he was the Messiah because he kept Torah. God is just bringing us back to the same agenda, that his word is what he says it is. And this is my instruction, and this is my warning. Understand, by your conduct, you will either tell them God is real and he's serious about his word, or he's not. It's what you do. Parents, it is what your kids see. If you leave here and you do the opposite of what they're being taught down at the bottom, what authority are you going to have in their life when they leave you and make their own way? Are they going to be standing there going, oh yeah, it was really important. They listened for 2 hours and then we left, and then they did exactly the opposite of what we were told downstairs? In your workplaces, in your families. Never mind the Jew that is being prepared and God slowly but surely going, lost the questions. Seek me, you will find me. Am I really this pagan deity that they're making me out to be? Or is the word? And he comes up to you and you go, university? That might be the seed to get a person to accept Messiah and accept his eternal life. Because for the first time in his life, something makes sense. We missed him because of the way he was depicted. They missed him because they were looking. I know we're not getting very far. When they were looking for Messiah, and Messiah has been, when you look at the term Mashiach in Scripture, it's kind of been hidden. You have things like Ben Adam, son of Adam. Okay? You have terms Messiah. You have David. There's a prophecy where it talks about David, but David had been dead for 400 years. David means beloved. And there's these hidden, it's probably about 5 or 6 of them. There's these hidden little gems that he says, this is the, understand, this is, I'm the good shepherd, I am this, I am that. And he's giving you these pictures of who they are. But they were looking for a lion when the lamb came. They were looking for the Mashiach who was going to bring liberation, freedom, in the sense of get rid of the Romans. Set us free. Stand here and tell them to leave us alone so we can serve God. But you're not serving God now. Why would you do it differently if they left? See, they missed him because of their perception. They wanted him to fit their box. And no matter how many times he told them. Remember John was being locked up after giving Herod Antipas a piece of his mind because he took his brother's wife. He said, listen, but this is not good. What are you doing? So after that whole little spiel, they lock him up and they put him in jail, and he's going and he calls out to Messiah. He knows who he is. And he says, go and ask him. What does he ask him? Are you the Messiah, or should we look for another? He said, behold the man who has come to take away the sin of the Lamb of God. He knows exactly who he is. What he's saying, can you get off your butt and free us already? It was a beautifully veiled statement in a very rabbinic way. So what have you come here to do exactly? It's like if you're a rabbi and you sit in the back and you keep quiet, you don't want to do anything, and someone stands up and he goes, well, are you going to teach us or not? What are you doing here if you're not here to do this? And he goes in and he starts quoting a scripture. And he says, look around and see what you do. He said, the blind are healed, deaf can hear. And he goes on and he says, can you see what I'm doing? That portion of scripture is to say, I will liberate. But he was talking about from physical stuff. If he carried on with the portion, it would go into from liberating in the sense of a lamb. I've come to set the captives free, not to liberate you from political bondage. He said, this is why I'm here. John, you got it wrong. Sorry. When they came looking for him, they looked for a lion and they got a lamb and they missed him completely. When we're standing here now, some of us are looking for a lion. Judgment and wrath and strike them and all the rest of it. Some of us are looking for a lamb because we want mercy and all the rest of it. Forgive us, judge them, like in God, please. But understand something. When he comes again, you have seen the lamb, you will get the lion.
Come back to the tomb with stone.
Yes.
Does that have any connotation with the line in Revelation where it talks about you being given white stones as a memory?
No.
Nothing to do with it.
No, that was actually a judicial term where it says, actually what happened was the practice was that if you got that stone, it would be a sign from Caesar that you have been, that your sins have been forgiven, your penalty has been paid. So you would show them the stone of, I'm free, and that would free you. So it was more of a judge, basically a governmental pardon. Okay? Those stones, I believe, are more to be like, when Peter talks about, let you be a standing stone. Because remember, anytime that God did anything, that we could put a pile of stones over there, so every time you walk past, this is what God did here. So his life is literally a testimony to that. Please?
I was just going to say that portion Yeshua quotes it, says where the blind see, deaf hear. He quotes from a portion in Isaiah, but he goes further and he says, the dead are raised. That isn't in the portion. So he says, I am, and basically in that what he says, he's telling him this and so on.
But John, he didn't need to tell John that. But at the same time, I think it was very much in the case of, there is that, but he was saying, what you're looking for is not why I came here. I came here to liberate. I came here to free. I came to set these captives free. They have been held back. And I want to show them who is God. And this is going to liberate throughout everywhere. Understand, from that time until the time he comes, he is the Lamb. He wants mercy. He wants love. He wants you to free people from bondage. He doesn't want judgment. He doesn't want wrath. He doesn't want to come back and stand on and go, that's it, time to get lucky. Remember all those people that hurt you? Now's the time they're going to pay. He will mourn that these people have chosen death instead of life. Be careful of the person who boasts when another person falls. Your heart is wrong. If you are to reflect the Messiah, even when they fall, you need to intercede for them because they are hurting not only themselves, they're hurting people around them. They don't see it. If God could love people to the point where they are busy mocking him, scorning him, putting him on a tree and says, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. For someone who hurt you, or your perception that they hurt you, and you just stand back and go, that's it, I'm done with that person forever, forget about it. I'm going to let God deal with them because now they're going to get it and they're going to see. Who are you exactly? That God should intervene to the point to destroy another person to make you feel good that you were beaten down. Oh, thank God he doesn't, because if that was the case, you, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 minutes ago, could be a person crying out against God against you because you cut him out in traffic and you said some nasty things to him, and he goes, they have wronged me, I have done nothing, Lord. Oh, but don't worry, it's on his way to church. Your conduct will either sanctify God or it will sanctify the world. You need to take on the yoke and understand that if I'm going to bring these people home, I need to do it the way he prescribed it. And these people, they choose destruction time and time and time again. Do me a favor. Instead of judging them, pray for them. Instead of beating them down, love them. Love people when they're unlovable, because that's what Christ made you to do. If they knew any better, they would act differently. But until God switched on your light, you were the same. Maybe not as bad, maybe worse. Okay? Any questions, any thoughts about that entire thing? Alright, jolly good. Yeah, we still got time. Alright. Yeah, first two. Yes. No, I think we got past the Simon when it comes to that. Yeah. Yeah, so he says he was testing you to find out whether you really love Adonai, your God, with all your heart and all your being. So he says, you know, if you're going to follow after someone because he just does some cool stuff, or speaks really well, it just brings me to Hitler again. You know that he wasn't exactly of major stature, but he was a powerful public speaker.
Yeah.
And he said, what was it, you tell them a lie often enough, they'll start to believe it? He used to practice. And these guys looked at the way this man did. He practiced in the mirror so that he would be so convincing about what he believed that he would convince others because he believed it that strong. If that's how people are wired, how much more is your testimony with the Holy Spirit flowing through you? Because you stand on the faith of God is real. He is eternal. If that's my platform, I don't need to be shouting it out. I just need to be convincing. How do I show you that I'm convincing? On my feet. I believe it is eternal by what I do. God believed, or Noah believed God that it was going to rain where he never saw rain in his life before. So it's going to come from the sky and from the ground. I need to build a boat. Okay, what's a boat? And help me with this thing, I don't understand it, but he did it. He had faith, but because he had faith in God, he obeyed. Okay? You are to follow Adonai your God, fear him, obey his mitzvot. Remember that term fear is to respect, to hold in esteem. Obey his mitzvot, listen to what he says, serve him and cling to him. Hold on tight, things can get bumpy. For you guys who are going to Israel, you know what I'm talking about. Alright? And that prophet or dreamer is to be put to death because he urged rebellion against Adonai your God, who has brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you from a life of slavery in order to seduce you away from the path Adonai, well, he has ordered to seduce you from the way that from the path Adonai your God ordered you to follow. It is a capital offense to go up and tell God that he's not God. It is blasphemous. It is trying to lead the people away from life. Understand, God is looking at a different perception. We look at him and go, wow, dude, that's pretty harsh, right? God's so mean and he just wants to kill everybody. Understand something. If God did not intervene in Egypt, an entire nation, an entire world would have lost a testimony about who God was. And if there is no God, there is no life. When they die, where do they go? So am I worried about your right now, or am I worried about your eternity? What is more important to a loving Father? That your future is set, or you're happy right now? I will have you set out for your life. But if I need to lock you up in your room because you're being a brat, trust me, this is going to be the lesser of things that I have to worry about.
What's interesting here is that if someone had to do that today, go against the king, could be treason.
Yeah.
And they'd be good, lock that person away, you know? But here against the creator of the universe, the one who say, oh, you're unjust.
Indeed.
Because they try to dethrone him, but it's unjust for the penalty.
Yeah, indeed. And it was a very interesting thing. When I was reading one commentary. It says the rabbis have never have had this instance that have had to actually carry it out in the land of Israel. Use it, don't use it. Okay? They have gotten to the place where they recognize the false prophet or a dreamer to the point where no one has walked away from God. In the sense of, not saying that they haven't been false prophets, but saying that they've never actually been duped away from God. Okay? When a shepherd comes in, that Lord is my shepherd thing just keeps on, it just pops up in my head. That when a wayward lamb goes walking by himself and decides to climb down a wadi or tries to do some, cliff skipping or things like that, the lamb is going to end up killing itself, right? Wadis, rushing water, floods, not knowing where food is, lions and bears, David's time. There is going to be death and destruction out there, but with me there's life. And if one goes, others follow. So one person who acts in disobedience and goes against God can lead a whole group of people to their death. Buddha is a nice example. You know that they don't actually pray to the little fat man statue, they actually pray with the person who was Buddha, and he is giving you his wisdom on how to get to enlightenment and fullness and glory. One man lost the plot. How many millions throughout the generations since then? And I mean, Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism, so it goes way back. Eh? How many millions have died because of one man's disobedience following that exact same thing? I had a dream. No, I have a higher plane of enlightenment. No, I understand things a little bit better. Come and I will tell you about it. Because they do not know their God, they fall and they should, and that's where they hit. God does not like his children to go off on their own. They're not safe. They will be destroyed, they will get hurt, they will bump their head, and God willing, sometimes the shepherd finds them. But he would rather break the sheep's leg and keep them close than let them destroy themselves and everybody else. Okay?
I just want to say, also, that's quite a challenge for us as well, because it also says in Old Testament and New Testament, there's actually one of the commandments is with false prophets not to entertain him, and that's also mentioned in New Testament as well. So then, with God taking us on this journey, people thinking we're in our falls, and it's such a mission, but what we're kind of realizing after all the years is that, like you said, the best thing is the walk. That speaks louder, the action speaks louder than words, because you're taking on the Torah, you're taking on God's instruction because of relationship with Him and love, that you want to follow, you want to do it. And that blessing comes from keeping His word. And then the fruits of the blessing in your family, in everything in your life, is a testimony. That's like your personal testimony, and that's kind of what helps in those situations. But it's quite hurtful because we're kind of dealing with this whole thing with this, it seems to be with a false thing. Yeah, so that's quite difficult to sometimes get a handle on.
It amazes me how crafty Hasatan is.
Yeah.
He's a deceiver, so you have to be duped enough to believe that you get deceived and get pulled away. When we were having a discussion that became extremely animated because of a guy who had very much quite a large theological background with his masters in theology. And after, there were quite a few times where context was pulled out, and then they strung a whole bunch of things to get together to try and make a point. We sat down and we thought about it, and then Mark, SMS'd me and he says, dude, we need to pray for them. He says, you know what, it just struck me that this guy is a false prophet. And he is fighting tooth and nail to convince us that we are taking people into bondage and death. And at the same time, that portion that comes to mind is like, forget where it is, but a person that looks at themselves in the mirror and they walk away and they forget what they look like. They look deeply into God's face and they walk away, and then there is no reflection whatsoever. There is just absolutely nothing. They haven't cleaned themselves up, they haven't taken away their sin, because they're so busy pushing their point. See, we want to be right. And if I can make you wrong, that means I'm right. That's Greek. That's debating. In a rabbinic mindset, it is yes, and yes, and yes, and you've lost the plot. I'll give you a typical example. What color is my shirt?
Black.
Black. White. Grey. Splotchy. Who's wrong?
No one.
No one. It's just a different perspective. It's a different level that you're looking at. But if you don't understand what you need as your base, what your eyes need to see, then we get to a place where we just literally we need to be safe from ourselves, or we push our point so hard that we force people off, as they do us. I mean, I'm sure a few of you have the testimony. Once you said, I want to keep Torah, a few people have said to me they weren't welcome back in their church or their Bible study and stuff like that. They were pushed out. Okay? It's an unfortunate thing. But they are guarding themselves against exactly what we're trying to keep them to. So we need to pray. Okay? Where am I? 6. If your brother, the son of your mother, or the son of your daughter, or the wife whom you love, or your friend who means as much to you as yourself, secretly tries to entice you to go and serve other gods, which you haven't known, neither you nor your ancestors, gods of the people surrounding you, whether near or far away from you, anywhere in the world, you are not to consent. You are not to listen to them. You are not to pity him or spare him. And you are not to conceal him. Rather, you must kill him. Understand. There has been a Sanhedrin that sends one person to death in their entire span of years that they are considered a bloody Sanhedrin. They will always err on the merciful. And you only send someone to death according to what God said with 2 or 3 witnesses. This is not just, you said, Vince, you mentioned that fat guy. Come, let's take him outside and stone him. This is about you come and serve him. Now understand what that means. How do you serve a Canaanite deity? You use their altars, you go to their high places, you're part of their worship system. So that means you would have to leave your camp. And you would have to go sneaky up to high places. And you would have to intently focus, walk all the way up there and act in that thing. This is not a slight discussion about. That's how it starts though. Be very careful. This seems to make more sense, you know. This idea of enlightenment and stuff. Really? I don't see that anywhere in my Bible. What are you talking about? If you bring it back to God's word, you will always have a base to say, no. You're telling me this. Show me the example here, and then we can discuss it. If you don't show me the example, I disagree. Love humanity. That is not what God has said. Okay? We need to use discernment. We have doctrines and ideas and man-made things where we come into mass loads of, I don't know, weird and wonderful things, and then we go to this place and then we go, hang on, but it's not mentioned anywhere in my Bible. So where did this idea come from?
That's actually what I wanted to say about the name Jesus. I don't know if I'm wrong, but I learned that it is actually a translation from Zeus.
It is the right sound, but there is no Z.
Yeah.
Okay? So that whole purpose of that, it is linked to, but anything Zeus in Greek is kind of the way the language worked. Yeah. So there was a lot of things. It's like saying, because there's a word in Hebrew, therefore everything is linked to the holy, because Elohim is God. So Shulchanim, table, is that linked to the holy?
Yeah, and then it just goes a bit deeper. The way I thought about it is that why did they keep the name Hasatan in the original Hebrew, but they didn't keep the name Yeshua in the original Hebrew? If they wanted to translate it, they could have kept it as salvation, but they changed it to Jesus.
Yeah, because we're talking about a person, not a function. And this is where the Greek mindset overrides. Because you're sitting there trying to figure out, what am I saying? And I don't envy these guys' jobs. Okay? Can you imagine, if I keep it to the literal sense, you're talking about a man. But the fact that guy's name means something. So am I talking about the man, or am I talking about his function? And if I'm talking about his function, here's a nice example. Obadiah. What does Obadiah mean? servant of God. So when we start hearing the term servant of God in Isaiah, am I talking about Obadiah? Am I talking about Messiah? Am I talking about Isaiah? Please transliterate for me so that we can understand this in its fullness. And that's when we go, to keep to its literal text, they will use what they can. And then some translators will go, no, but this is talking about the Messiah. But that's the beautiful thing about prophetic problems is, you don't know if he's talking about it then, because prophecy cycles, or if he's talking about the future. You see, when we talk about the man Emmanuel, right? Everybody know who's Emmanuel? Yeshua. Means, you know there was another Emmanuel before Yeshua? Maheshal Hashbaz. He says, I will give you a sign, king, that you will see that God is with us, Emmanuel. And Alma will bear a child. Alma is not Betullah. Betullah is a virgin, 100%. Alma is the term he used, a young maiden / could be virgin. Isaiah's wife had a son, Maher Shal Hashbaz, that you will know that God is with us. Med Emmanuel, but his name is Maher Shal Hashbaz. But he was actually also alluding to the Alma, which would be his child, that we're talking about when Messiah came. So things just got a whole bunch more complicated. Now if you start looking at it, and that's why it's so important to get back into the Hebrew, and to look at what the words are supposed to mean. Because also when you get letters that were written in Greek, when they start talking about love, and we go, love is love is love is love, and then in Greek you have 5 different words for love. You have phileo, which is brotherly, you have agape, which is divine, and so on and so on. Which one do you use? Straight down the line, literally, context is correct. You will love him. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? But he actually asked in 3 different contexts. You know I love you.
So I have a question. What's the name that is like the people called him? What is the name that the people called him?
We believe that it would be pronounced Yeshua.
Okay, so why didn't they keep it as Yeshua instead of? I understand what you're saying about the
Because of
function.
salvation
I
or
get you.
name, yeah.
But then if you're going to translate, as
There
in
are certain problems with the Greek because letters are missing that you're not going to get the yud and the sh and the sound. So now they have to try and use that, but if the actual alphabetical letters, the way they're pronounced in Greek is completely different. Okay, to give you one simple example. Translate is, how do I do this? Sadi, I don't want to do it wrong. There's a Hebrew letter which is kind of said like this. Sadiq. It's called the Sadi. Okay? Now that one letter, in English we have sort of 3 letters that have to come in to make that one sound. How do we correctly say a Sadiq? Okay? To pronounce out, especially when we're talking about names, that sort of name is going to be very difficult to say, okay, the man's name is Sadok. But actually when it gets translated as Zadok.
It's a very nice example of the branch you have. You don't have that in English, so they go, good.
Yeah. George is Georg, right? And you're like, what is a Georg? Something that I did, but I don't understand what the org part is. It's very difficult, and I hear what you're saying. But when you come down looking at the transliteration, especially for languages that even work so very differently, where Hebrew is very expressive and always linked up with different meanings and always coming back to the roots and images and stuff like that, where Greek is very clinical and very concise. Okay? We can probably chase our tail about this for a few hours. But I think what the guys are challenged with is trying to capture the fullness of a name with the fullness of a function, but also getting the pronunciation as close to it in Greek as it was in Hebrew. And I mean, it's going to be possible.
Why
It
didn't
really is tough.
the translators then just use the Old Testament Joshua, which means the same thing?
It is slightly different, because when you look at Yeshua, it comes from the same root as Yehoshua, but it's different. Okay, it's the same as a Talmid and Lomed. Talmid is a disciple, Lomed is to learn. Okay, so I can't use exactly the same pronunciation because I'm talking about 2 different things, but they are linked together. When you look at Yehoshua, when he was in the Old Testament, this is how it was written.
Same as Hosea as well.
Okay, similar root. Okay, Hoshua, when God changed his name, he added the Yud, his first letter, Yud He Vav He, and he said, Yahoshua or Yahushua. Okay? It could be Yad, it could be Yeah, depending on what you're trying to push. But this means God saves, where this means saves. Okay? So now he's saying, no, my boy, you are not going to save my people. I am going to save my people through you. That's what he's telling. And they will understand that. So when they look at that, now you're coming here with Yeshua. He says it's not just about saved, it's salvation in everything, even though the names are linked. So it's a slightly different function. Okay.
I battled with this name of Jesus versus Yeshua, and I did all this looks up, and I believed in my heart of hearts, in my soul, that I should not say Jesus. And eventually I got to the conclusion that to me it's important, but it's just as important to Yeshua for people to understand who we worship.
Yeah.
And if sometimes I have to say Jesus with the explanation, however, I call him Yeshua, because that's what his mother would call him, and for very many other reasons, I've come to a place of comfortable acceptance.
Yeah.
It still makes me a bit twitchy when people say Jesus within the fellowship. Sorry guys, sorry, but yeah. It still makes me a bit twitchy, but I'm looking at the heart rather than at the word.
Yeah, but you're also understanding you're coming from a church background, and that church background has now given you a doctrine, and that you found out that doctrine wasn't true.
Yeah.
And they pushed Jesus, and you found out Yeshua, and now it's like, but this is what is true. This is truth mixed with lies. I want that to fall away, and I'll focus on truth.
Yeah, so it became a symbol as such.
Yeah.
And now that I'm at maybe a bit more mature, and I'm looking at it and saying, hey, hang on a minute. As long as you understand who I worship because of my walk, then I'm okay if you say Jesus. And I've noticed that people are more inclined, as they progress, to say Jesus less and put the focus on Yeshua more because it becomes more meaningful. And as you say, it then has a meaningful name or a meaningful reference as opposed to a name that means nothing.
Yeah.
I agree. The one thing that I've told many people is be careful to confuse incantation with invocation.
Yeah.
If you think just naming a name, whatever it is going to give you magical powers, that's incantation, that's magic.
Yeah.
Your walk is what is the invocation. If you say Jesus, or if you say Iosis, or if you say Yeshua, it is meaningless if your walk is not in accordance with the Father.
Yeah. When he says pray in my name, he's saying in the function of me.
Exactly.
You have been saved, therefore you have access to me, therefore we can pray to God. Direct.
Many people take that and think that means incantation instead of
Well,
invocation.
remember what happened in the story of Acts very quickly. It says guys walked out and they heard of the thing and they said, in Yeshua's name, but they didn't know the man. And the demon walked up to him and said, Yeshua I know, Paul I know, you I don't know. And he beat the snot out of them and then they ran away. Purely because of that same thing. There is not a formula to get an access to God. It is your relationship and praying in petition with the name of authority of. I come here with the authority of your son.
Exactly.
Because I am now your son. And now I can have that right relationship with you.
But then surely anybody who says Jesus or Yeshua or Emmanuel, everybody knows who we're talking about when you say Jesus.
Absolutely.
Even an atheist. He's
Absolutely.
going to know who you're referring to, the guy who was crucified 2,000 years ago.
Yes.
And who sometimes was resurrected, as an atheist would say.
Yeah.
But we know who we're talking about.
Yes.
So surely it doesn't matter if it's Yeshua or
I think no, it comes down to personal preference. So when you're talking maybe again to a Jewish person, when that exact connotation of that Jesus, hot cross bun and Easter egg Jesus, Christmas, December 25th Jesus, no, you can keep it. But if you're coming to the point and saying, look, when you start to look for Yeshua in Torah, that immediately opens up a whole new world for them. And like I said, it's a personal preference. People have grown up with it their entire life and they've got no problem. I've got no problem saying the name. I prefer to use Yeshua, like I said, because it means more to me.
Connotation.
And yeah, and that's what we want to get into. But don't get into a place where, yeah, you know, we could sit and say, all right, you know, well, in this fellowship you will only refer to him as, but I mean, is that really the heart of what we do? No. Last thing.
Last thing. While we're still trying to figure him out, he's remaining the same.
Yes.
So I think he knows he's got a lot of mercy for us because we're his infant children. We're still busy learning to walk. He's not going to whack us because we're still trying to put our fingers in the blood.
Yeah. No,
He's helping us as we go. So we shouldn't beat ourselves up about it. We should just trust he will be the same. He's later than tomorrow. While he's teaching us, because he won't let his children be ignorant. And it's a slow process and a gentle process as well.
all right, guys, I'm going to have to cut it short because
Very
I was
last
told
one, very
I'm going to get beaten by Mom.
Just for practical example.